the future of medicine is into stem cells. Stem cells were the repair system of the body. And we had a plan that was putting more stem cells in circulation. AI will allow to tailor various kinds of treatment to various people given the entirety of who they are and where their physiology is.
Welcome to the Health Insights Podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Christian Drapeau, a pioneering stem cell scientist and a passionate advocate for regenerative medicine. With over 2 decades of research experience, Christian shares his remarkable journey from brain research to uncovering the extraordinary potential of stem cells as the body's repair system. In this conversation, we explore the groundbreaking discovery of stem cells' ability to transform and heal various tissues, the profound connection between plant-based extracts and stem cell activation, and the critical role of skepticism and evidence in advancing scientific breakthroughs. Christian delves into the barriers that have delayed mainstream acceptance of stem cell therapy, highlights the ethical considerations behind his approach, and offers a glimpse into the transformative potential of AI in personalized medicine. This episode is brought to you by Theia Health, dedicated to empowering individuals to take control of their health and well-being. Visit theiahealth.ai to learn more. All right, let's dive into today's conversation.
Christian, very nice to have you. Absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's get into the number one question. Stem cell scientist. What is it? How did you become it? And how is that going to shape the future?
Stem cells is too new. So like any new science, it's not yet in academia. So you become a stem cell scientist because wherever field you are in, you have an interest in it, and you start to dig into it. So, but soon I am sure it will become like a formation, because to me, the future of medicine, is into stem cells. So, like many stem cell researchers, I started in this field studying a topic. In my case, I was studying the effect of a plant extract and its effect on overall health.
Yeah.
And one thing leading to another, I discovered that it had an effect on stem cells. It was stimulating the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So from that point on, so we're like in 2001, and from that point on, I just started to really dive in the science of stem cells.
Amazing. What got you into looking at plants, their extracts, and how did that lead you to the stem cells? Like, what was your aha, maybe your aha moment, right? Of, hey, I'm doing all this research. Oh my God, it looks like stem cells are the future. Because like, to be fair to what you're saying, even in 2001, I remember it was like that huge DNA project everyone was talking about. Stem cells are the future. It took a while for them to actually take off. There's all this regulation. So maybe I'd love to hear your background on how did you get into that field, and then what led to that moment of you realizing that this is really important, and why?
Yeah, no, it's a cool question, because it'll take me a little bit of time here to tell you the story, but I think it's a great story because it's really the story of traditional scientific investigation. You observe something, you try to explain it, you go test your hypotheses, and you move forward. So that's really how I got into stem cell research. So my background is brain research. So I was doing studies on epilepsy, memory at the Montreal Neurological Institute, and I was hired by a company. This is 1995, a company selling a product called Klamath Lake blue-green algae. So you may have heard of the product. It's been on the marketplace for a few decades, but in the early 1990s, it was booming in America.
Yeah.
Déchet had just been passed, so now companies needed science to back up any of the claims that would be made about their product. So I was hired to study the mechanisms of action behind this blue-green algae and to explain how it was working in the body. So the main benefits were on inflammation, on the immune system, and on mental clarity, a sense of sort of mental energy, mood elevation. So we very quickly identified a polysaccharide that has an effect on the immune system, phenylethylamine that has an effect on the brain, and phycocyanin, the blue pigment in blue-green algae that acts on COX-2. So it's COX-2 blocker, so an inflammation. But as I'm doing all of this, I come across cases of people who reversed multiple sclerosis, heart disease, insulin-dependent diabetes, emphysema, Parkinson, Alzheimer's. So the extent of the benefit were impressive, But to me, as a scientist, the most challenging and impressive was the broad variety of benefits. What is this plant doing that it's helping one's heart, somebody else's pancreas, somebody else's brain, somebody else's lung, and so on? So we had no understanding of it. I did a number of studies. So it was in the early days of polyunsaturated fatty acids, so which are involved with brain development, involved with cardiovascular health, and so on. So we thought maybe it's an exceptional source of polyunsaturated fatty acid. And it is. It turned out to be. But as soon as I have the data, I'm thinking, great, but you take 2 tablespoons of flaxseed oil and you should have the same thing.
Right.
So there was still something. So we got great data, but nothing that really explained what we were seeing until early 2001, January 2001. A colleague sent me a paper that had just been published. The title was Turning Blood into Brain. So it was the first observation of a stem cell going from the bone marrow to the brain and becoming a brain cell. So you need to go back in 2001. Stem cells are precursors to blood cells. They don't do anything else in the body. And of all organs of the body, my background is brain research. We were told the brain does not regenerate.
Right.
So here's a stem cell going from the bone marrow to the brain. I thought it was pretty cool or pretty challenging, if I could say. So I went to the local medical library to see what else I could find. I found another paper talking about stem cells going to the heart and becoming heart cell, and another one to the liver, becoming liver cell. So I just thought, you go back in 2001 with whatever was the knowledge of the time, and I just thought, stem cells cannot become heart, brain, and liver and just that. If they become those 3 tissues, that means they can also become the rest. So it's just a matter of time. Scientists will document that they can become the rest. So let's assume that they can. That means they have to be the repair system of the body. How do you see a stem cell becoming a brain cell and just say that was a stupid stem cell? You know, it has to be its function. So we published an article in a journal, Medical Hypotheses, suggesting stem cells are the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, what if that blue-green algae acts as a stimulator of stem cells? It puts more stem cells in circulation. Just like you have plants stimulating the immune system, this would be a plant stimulating your repair system. So we have just an idea. So we bought a flow cytometer to count stem cells, and we started to work on ourselves. We would take a blood sample, take this blue-green algae, and then take another blood sample an hour or 2 later and see the change in the number of stem cells in circulation. And we discovered that's what the plant was doing. It was putting more stem cells in circulation. So now the next step is let's dive into scientific literature on stem cells to better understand what is this phenomenon. And at the time when people were hearing or reading that we had a product putting more stem cells in circulation, the typical, almost unavoidable response was, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's an artifact. Maybe it's not real. Maybe it's bad for you. Maybe you'll stimulate cancer. So then we had to really dive into it to find the mechanism of action, active compound, proof of concept. And that's really how it all started. So from that point on, I became involved in stem cell research.
Wow. So it was really the intercept of, you studied the brain basically forever. The scientific truth was, this is something that can't be fixed if broken, just paraphrasing, obviously. And then some breakthrough happens through other research that you're looking at that shows that might not be true. And then therefore, and I just want to make sure I understood for educating myself, then you're like, these 2 things, we need to mesh them together as soon as possible to see if everything is going to change in the future. And it sounds like that is the research that you're doing now and got into. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the moment I came across that paper and a few of the other papers, to me, it's the early days. There's still a lot of questions, but it seemed to really line up with no question in my mind. Stem cells were the repair system of the body.
Right.
And we had a plant that was putting more stem cells in circulation. So it looks like 2 great ideas together, but we need to start to test it. And we tested it with some cases that were, the type of cases where the doctor told these patients, there's nothing else that I can do for you. Yeah. Some of these cases were pretty significant: spinal myopathy, severe emphysema. And we saw the benefits like very quickly. And so to me at the time it was, and I remember one day sitting in my office and it just dawned on me. I'm thinking, man, we're putting an end to disease. And the rest has been 20 years of fighting to bring the information forward. And now there's so much science behind this.
Yeah.
No doubt. Stem cells are the repair system of the body, no doubt. And putting more stem cells in circulation, no doubt, can make these stem cells go where there's repair and then repair and improve various types of conditions.
Very
So
cool.
no, I think it when it sinks into academia, when it sinks into general mainstream medicine, I think this approach will really change the way that we not only understand health and wellness, but disease formation, the way we practice medicine.
Amazing. What do you think has held back stem cells from really progressing? As you said, one day we'll have it in healthcare. One day we'll have enough data. So it's been 23 years since this discovery and your work and your contribution. Where do you feel like the blocks are, and why have those blocks been up for you guys to push this technology through, given the overwhelming evidence and research that you've done?
I mean, it's a great question because I've had this question for a long time. Like I could not wrap my mind around how difficult it was to bring this concept and just have people just seeing it what I saw early on, which is like, wow, this is, this is great. And it was not the response. The overwhelming response was just like a wall. And I think it's a number of things. I think at the root of it, not at the root. I'll come back to the root after, because I think the problem at the root is just the human mind.
Yeah.
But as we were going through all these steps, so we're in 2001, so we structure everything. We really launched our first product on the marketplace in 2005, and that is right after the election. We're at the time Bush election, and put out there was the whole message that embryonic stem cell research was killing babies. It has never been killing babies. This was politics. So it's using baby parts. It's never been using baby parts.
Right.
This was all political messaging that clouded the issue and made a lot of people afraid of talking stem cells. It made people afraid that it was Frankenstein medicine. And so that was the first big obstacle. It was kind of lifted in 2011 when there was this whole organization, and I was there at the Vatican, where the Vatican basically came forward and said the restriction is with embryonic stem cell, not adult stem cells. Not a life is used to help another life when you tap into adult stem cells. So it lifted a lot of this wall. So it allowed us to move forward and really talk about stem cell research a little bit more.
Yeah.
But all of this being said, I now realize that the blockage was probably a little bit deeper than that, in the sense that I think the human mind can only take a jump that is so far away from what it knows and what it's comfortable with. Something comes that is just too far out, and people cannot just accept it. And one of the great examples to me is hand washing. I'm sure you know the story. 1850, obstetrician in Hungary realized that on a day that he goes to the OR or to deliver a baby, and before he was in the autopsy room, on those days he had a very high rate of mortality because of infection. So he thought, there's a death factor that I'm carrying from the OR, from the autopsy room to the delivery room. So I'm going to scrub my hands to wash out this death factor. And it stopped. He no longer has this mortality. So he tried to have people wash their hands, and it took him 25 years to convince his peers to wash their hand. And it's only then that they discovered that bacteria that had been discovered maybe a century before were actually the cause of cholera, pneumonia, all these diseases, tuberculosis. So now it made sense for them to wash their hand. But it took another century for hand washing to be used in hospitals. Just look at something so simple as hand washing needing so much time. And it's just because you bring an idea that didn't mean anything to people. It took them a lot of time and a lot of other people accepting it to kind of go into the fold and accepting it. So to me, it was just, it's that kind of phenomenon. We have nobody alive today is born at a time when a new system was discovered in the human body. Think about it, a new system in the human body. You know your cardiovascular system, your immune system. Everybody in college will learn about all these systems. And for 100 years, that's what we know about the body. And suddenly we discover, oops, the body has another system that we have not seen before. It's hard to swallow.
Right.
So I think that that's really the obstacle. The big wall was just to kind of sit with it and realize, yeah, that's what it is. Because of the way, the tools that we had to observe stem cells, it was such that this whole phenomenon has just not been seen before. And suddenly we realize it in the human body as a repair system.
Yeah.
I think that's what has been the obstacle. Now, COVID has made people realize that they are responsible for their own health. So now people are starting to just open their mind as to what's out there, not relying entirely on academia. That's one. And I think the other one is probably Tony Robbins' book, Life Force, that is talking about stem cells.
Yeah.
So people now are accepting that stem cell is a thing. So I think that this and whatever has happened in 2023, it changed.
Yeah.
I realized the message that I've been giving for 20 years started to really change.
Resonate,
So,
yeah.
and now it's I mean, the acceptance is phenomenal.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. Maybe some other examples of this would be, I believe it was an Italian man who said we should do a heart transplant when somebody got into a car accident. You know this story?
I don't.
So I think it was like, there was one doctor and somebody got into a car accident. And he's like, well, there was this heart that just died, but the heart is good. Like the person died, but the heart is good. Maybe we could transplant the heart. And he actually started to do these procedures with heart transplant, and it didn't really work that well, but like he saw that there was a way to the heart from somebody else to work in another body. And him just saying that we should transplant organs to other people, they called him a witch doctor, that he should be burned to death, that he's playing God and he shouldn't be, right? And so it was like the public perception was so against what this person was saying. And he's like, but there's evidence to suggest that you could live longer if you're in an accident if we do this. And they're like, we don't care about that, right? A similar thing is like, if we go to like the modern day, look, we're going to have autonomous cars and they can drive us everywhere, which is obviously more efficient. You can talk to your family, do work, be on a call, etc. And people are like, well, no, you're going to get rid of all the drivers and they're going to lose jobs. And it's like, but if you look at every new technology, it usually creates more jobs than it destroys. And a new format is just different ways of doing it, right? But people are, and like NASA has technology that's like 40 years ahead, but they're like, we can't release that to the public because they're not going to accept it, right? Like we need small steps for
small steps
for them to want to accept change. And I think I didn't know that was going to be your answer, but I really like that you went there because I totally agree with that. And I've seen that many times. Like no matter how much you want to show people some evidence, they're going to have preconceived notions, or they're going to have a tribe that they're already part of and think, well, don't give me new information because I don't want to leave my tribe, because if we go back to like ancient days of, you're in a tribe, and if you leave, a saber tooth basically kills you, or a new tribe member is not going to accept you, so they kill you. So it's like every path is death other than progress. So I really like that was where your train of thought went completely, because I do very much agree that people are very not prone to change. They don't want it. They don't like it. And it keeps us alive, right? It's the human nature.
And a lot of people think that they have free will,
Yeah.
and do not realize the degree to which there's not a whole lot of free will in there.
Correct.
It's really how the people that have an influence of you consciously or unconsciously, whatever they support and they decide, makes it so much easier for you to kind of file in the fold and accept a new idea.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a lot what has happened with us. With this messaging, there's a point where some people with good reputation, some people who carried influence, when they said that they like or believe our science, then suddenly a lot of people just said, I don't know how many times when we do an event, people come and they say, I've seen your information for years, but I just thought it was like bullcrap.
Yeah.
And then, but now, I see that you're here, and then, a lot of people are believing you. So I want to know more about it. So that's another thing. So we've got people that came out and affirmed their understanding and their belief in everything that we've put out, which is scientifically so solid. I mean, it is so solid.
Yeah.
I still have to be kind of caught by a doctor or anybody asking a question for which there's no answer. And it's not me. It's just the science of stem cells is so prolific and so solid. Yeah. So that makes it also, that is what has pushed us to where we are today.
Amazing.
I think it's influencers and people trusted by the public who have come out and basically said, our science is solid.
We back this. Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned that I would like to unpack with you. Pretty much, and some people don't know this, but a lot of people do, which is every medicine is based off basically plants and extracts. Every supplement is based off plants and extracts. One is called a medicine, one is called a supplement. some say one thing works and the other one doesn't, and vice versa. You've now have a product line around stem cells and production of stem cells. How did you go about making decisions on which path to take to support stem cell growth, regeneration in people, and how they're doing it, right? Because there was two distinct paths, in my opinion, anyway. And you're obviously a researcher and a scientist, and so you're in multiple pockets of medical systems and care. What was your thought process there, and how did you come to where you're at today, and maybe a little bit about the products that you are producing?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question because it's not asked often, and there was a whole thought process behind taking the right path or the direction that we took.
Yeah.
So, and it has to do with a few reality of our medical world. Number one, our world today, our medical world, is based on diagnosis and not based on physiology. I don't want to normalize the normal process of what lead to high blood pressure.
Yeah.
I just want to block your smooth muscles and shut down that blood pressure. Doesn't matter if the process that led to it continues to do its damage in you. As long as I reduce that parameter, I've treated you. Which is, it's ridiculous, but that's really how mainstream medicine is working right now. So we treat symptoms. A product like what I'm talking about does nothing to symptoms. It boosts your innate ability to repair. We go to the root cause, if you want, of the problem. That approach does not have a place right now in medicine. So the moment that we come with a product that boosts your own stem cells, that doesn't fit in any of the classes that exist in mainstream medicine. So already there's a clash to go to mainstream medicine. The next step was that, let's say we decide to go into that path of developing it into a drug. Let's say I document, like we're doing right now, that putting more stem cells in circulation can actually improve or actually reverse heart disease, heart problems. Now you make it into a heart remedy. Now that it's been put into a heart remedy, it's hard to now prescribe it from something else. If I have a product that I have seen benefits for people for their liver function, their heart function, their brain function, their lung function, I make a decision to say, and beyond that, I also have a product that healthy people can decide to say, I'm going to take this to stay healthy. Now I take a product away from all these people and I say, no, it's going to go for people that have heart problem. So for me, purely from an ethics standpoint, if I document and I go the pharma route, I essentially take the product away from anybody who is responsible about their health. So I thought that, to me, it was a crime. We're moving in a place where we want people to just be more responsible of their own health. My father at some point said, we were telling him, we need to be careful for your health. And he says, my health is the responsibility of my doctor. It's not my responsibility.
Right.
And it's interesting because that's the vision of another generation.
Right.
The doctor is responsible for my health. I think that post-COVID, if there's one thing that has become real, is that, no, you're responsible for your health because the system is not really there for you. So when people are responsible for their health, and now we discover that at the core of any health issue and optimal health and longevity, it's boosting or supporting the role of your own stem cells. It's a crime if I take that away and I say, no, let's position it into one area because we want to make a lot of money with it. So somewhere it was really this thought process. We cannot just take it away from people that are responsible for their health. And how can we demonstrate it for one condition and remove it for the others?
Right.
It is a product that tackles physiology, not symptoms. So this whole process made it obvious that the only route that we have is really dietary supplements, with the limitation that we can never talk about its benefit on various health issues. Like right now, we have research on stem regen, this blend of plants that we have put together. It's an ongoing study, but so far in the study, 10 patients out of 10 with chronic stable congestive heart failure have regained normal heart function. I'm stating it here,
Amazing.
But I'm never going to put that into a marketing message. It's never going to be on our website. We'll never use this to promote the product. I'm doing this just to show, well, your stem cells are your own repair system. Your stem cells have enormous potential. Here's the extent of their potential. Look what it can do to the heart. And that's the extent of how that kind of data is going to be used. So that's the limitation that haven't taken this direction. That's the limitation that we have. But hey, it's what we have to do.
Amazing. Very well said and very thorough. So I appreciate that. I think we've talked a lot about positioning, the brain, the industries that we're in, and identified that a lot of the time what holds us back is ourselves, as you mentioned. You're somebody that has 30 years of experience doing research, which means that you're making hypotheses and testing those, making hypotheses and testing those. My assumption is that you have gained skills and insights that make you think differently or critically, maybe better than most people, just because you've put in that many reps into doing that. Can you unpack for us, is there things that after 30 years of research, maybe takeaways that people can use to make them think differently, to make them not, make it easier so they're not comfortable, make it easier so they can digest information? Do you have any tips for people who are listening to this going, Christian made some really good points, and I don't want to fall into these traps that are being talked about in this podcast. You as the guy that has 30 years of experience, what would you say to that person?
Interesting question. First time I have that kind of question. Let me put that and tell me if that answers your question.
Sure.
Number one, for me, I'm a deep skeptic. So
yeah,
you tell me something, my first reaction is I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say it's not true.
Right.
I'm just going to say I don't have enough information to have an opinion one way or another. And then I'll go and I'll dig. But not at the expense of truth or reality. And what I mean by this is that, for example, when I discovered what this blue-green algae was doing on stem cells, and I see all the literature about releasing stem cells, our stem cells can become brain cells, and so on. This is in the literature. But I remember it was probably like 2007, and I'm giving a presentation, and there's this older fellow that stands up and he says, stem cells cannot become brain cells. This is ludicrous.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I was writing my book at the time, so I had all the literature in my room. So I told him, he says, if you want, I can go and get that literature. I can show it to you. Stem cells can definitely become brain cells. And he says, don't bother, son. Let me tell you something, because it looks like nobody is telling it to you. You're just an idiot.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me, but I'm saying this because it really encapsulates a reality of traditional mainstream science, which is, if I tell you something that you have not learned in academia, then I'm not going to believe it.
Sure.
So all I'm saying is that my way of approaching this is that if I see somebody levitating, I may not be able to explain it, but I'm not going to say he did not levitate.
Right.
I'm just going to find what is it that he did to make it happen. And so one thing for me is like, be a skeptic, but don't say no to things that are observed, that you have seen. Believe what you have seen over theories that may not explain what you have seen. To me, it's a much better place to say, I don't know, but I'm not going to reject reality. I'm just going to say, I don't know. So that's one thing. And the other one would be, at some point I was, and it's a little bit in the same vein, I was having a lunch with somebody who was not a scientist.
Yeah.
And we're talking about different things. And he says, oh, I'm really like digging now this whole thing about pineal gland calcification. My background is neurophysiology. I did brain research.
Yeah.
Pineal gland calcification. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm just thinking, what other like baloney is that? But I remember everybody who reject what I was saying about stem cells. So I'm self-conscious here. I'm not going to reject it because I don't know it. So he keeps talking to me, and I pull up my phone, I go in PubMed, I put pineal gland calcification, and I see all these papers coming out. It was a real thing. Yeah. So here's my point. Accept everything. Don't believe it. Accept it, take it, go and look at it, and never discard reality. And take reality as really your benchmark, if you want. So to me, that's the thing to do to investigate anything that is new. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I want to go a little bit deeper with that. If you're a skeptic, great, be a skeptic, right? And then your point was, if somebody tells you something that you're skeptical about, or maybe is not believable, or is, let's just say, new, and so therefore you don't have an opinion, maybe, what would be your thought process, or how would you want people to approach verification of that information? Because notoriously today, you could write an article about anything and you can be anybody.
Correct.
And so therefore I could go on YouTube and argue that vegan is the best diet. I could find 10 videos on vegan is the worst diet for you, right? I'm just giving very black and white examples that people can understand. How would you approach it as a general consumer or somebody listening to this, as somebody who's an expert at finding information and verification?
Very, very good question, because one of the outcome of the internet and social media that we have today, I put a perspective on it, but to me, before the internet, anything that ends up being published went to peer review of some kind.
Mhm.
It's an editor, it's a board, or it's a scientific paper with a peer review process. Somebody looked at that information and vetted that information. This is gone.
Yeah.
This no longer exists on the internet. You can come across tons of information that nobody has vetted.
Right.
But we did not make that transition, general population, to go from hearing an information that without really knowing where it came from was always vetted, to the same information now coming from somebody unvetted. And it's what we're exposed to. So I would say a lot of what comes out from social media, Google, is unfortunately not vetted.
Yes.
It's sad, but it's like 99% garbage.
Yeah.
So there's an easy way to verify it. I'll give you two means of verifying it.
Mhm.
One, go to PubMed. Do PubMed, Google PubMed. That's the scientific library of the International Institute of Health, National Institute of Health. Go there and put the keyword that you're looking for. Pineal gland calcification. Is that true? Just put that in there and you'll see the paper coming out. It is scientific literature. It's technical. It can be complicated, but you will find one or two or three of these papers in there. You read the abstract, you will get it. You don't need to be a deep scientist to be able to extract from this whether this is true or not.
Yeah.
So that will be my first place to go. There's another site that has come out, which is, to me, amazing. Consensus.ai.
Okay.
And you know the website?
No, I'm interested.
Consensus.ai. It's like it's Chat GPT for scientists.
Nice.
And so you can put your question. I don't know. Is it true that caloric restriction extends lifespan? Put the question in there, and it's going to come out with a response that is developed, and you will all have the literature, all the papers from which that information has been extracted. So you will have a response based on the scientific literature to your question. And then you can go back to the social media with a little bit of a background of whether what this person is telling you is true or not. And then that person can share you details, but at least you've developed some sort of a trust base, to what this person is saying.
Amazing. Very, very good takeaway. Last thing I want to dive into. In your opinion, what is the future of healthcare? What technologies do you see coming out that you're excited about? And what should people be looking forward to?
I was going to say, I'm not a fan of AI. I mean, AI is amazing.
Yeah.
AI is, right now, I don't think I could live the way that I like without AI. I can find so many answers. I just share with you Consensus.
Right.
When I have a question, I go there immediately. I use AI but you need to verify it,
Mhm.
But AI is growing at a speed. It has its huge negative. Think about it. Any kind of critical thinking that you have right now, you don't need it anymore with AI. I
Right.
think it's going to create a generation of just brain lazy people just by the nature. Right now, when's the last time you looked at a map?
Never.
That's
yeah.
it.
I don't
Probably
even
didn't
remember.
grow with a map. so, and it makes your brain lazier. Like
Yeah.
I remember today, I'm doing the same. I use map, but there's a time when I was using actual maps
Yeah.
where you go somewhere, you need to memorize what you're
Yeah,
going.
that's right.
You have the entire map in your head. You cross a street, it's in your head. I don't have that anymore.
Right.
So brain capacity or our use is completely, it's not the same. I think AI will have a huge negative impact. But today, in the world of medicine, it will bring an amazing progress because now you can take 10,000 lab tests of your blood, feed that into a machine with the diagnosis that different people have, and it's going to pick up patterns that a human would have never picked up.
Yeah.
So I think AI will be amazing for diagnosis, amazing to identify the same treatment that is applied to a diagnosis does not work for everybody. It's just because the diagnosis may be the same, but the etiology and the people who have the diagnosis are different. So it will be AI will allow to tailor various kinds of treatment to various people given the entirety of who they are and where their physiology is. I think that this is a huge step in medicine. And I would couple that for stem cells. The moment you have a cold, what do? You boost your immune system. The moment we realize collectively, like mainstream medicine, realize we have a repair system. What else is better to do when you have anything broken in your body than just starting by boosting your repair system? So I think AI coupling with really fully tapping into the potential of regenerative stem cell science, I think it's going to completely change the way that we do medicine. So in the medicine world, I think that these are probably like the next two big things.
Amazing. Christian, you were an absolute pleasure. Wealth of knowledge. Where can people find out about you and connect with your mission, your values, and your companies?
Our website, so what we do in the whole field of stem cells is at stemregen.co, stemregen.co, and answers to like what we did right now will probably spliced into nuggets, and this will be put on my social media. So Stem Cell Christian on both TikTok, Instagram, and I put tons of material on these, so you can go and watch it.
Perfect. And we'll link those in the episode notes. So guys, absolutely go check out Christian's stuff and future of healthcare being built right in front of our eyes. Thank you
so
very much.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That was great.